Good afternoon, good evening, yes. Buenas noches. And welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View this evening. Brendan Rodgers has spoken. Yes, the media have asked him, finally. They have asked the question about his contract. And it's as you were, really, wasn't it? It's definitely a case of as you were. There was nothing really new come out. It's good to know that he has obviously had a sit-down meal with Dermot Desmond and the crew, but that's it. Celtic Boss revealed that he had held discussions over a dinner, over a meal, and we chatted about a number of things. He said it was nice to meet. Then he went on to say, he said, I need to earn my place here at Celtic. He says, that's what I felt when I came back, and that's what I still have to do. Do you think, I'm going to put this out there, will the board members be thinking that you didn't hit all your targets last season? Failing at the Scottish Cup final, as dramatic as it was, Celtic may be thinking, do you know what, you kind of let yourself down, Brendan. We had plans to dominate Scottish football once again under yourself, and for the second season in a row, you've not managed to live up to expectations. The conversation might have went like that, and then Brendan Rodgers may have came back to the board and said, well, you sold Kyogo Furiashi and you didn't get me a player in that I needed. So, do you know, a year's a long way out. A lot can happen in football in a year. And that's what Brendan Rodgers says. He said, look, there's a year to go. A year's a long way out. It doesn't say that he's not going to sign a new contract. He did go on to say, it wouldn't matter to me if it was 1 week, 1 year, or 10 years. I'll be super motivated to progress this team and keep us moving forward. Which you would expect Brendan to do. You know, that's as a manager and as his love for Celtic, he's always going to try and progress the team as far as he can with the squad of players that he has. So maybe he is waiting to see, or maybe it is just a case of, do you know, make sure you get us into the Champions League. It could be as simple as that. The board have went, you kind of fell short last year when it came to winning the treble. We can all agree that there's some mutual ground to be covered within getting a new deal done. But we want to make sure, before we give you a new deal, we want to make sure that you can get us into the Champions League. Because that's what matters. There's no use give Brendan Rodgers a new contract and then he doesn't get us into the Champions League, because that'll get the fans back up right at the start of the season. So I think it's prudent by the club to hold off. I'm still going for the October announcement. I still will go for the October announcement during the international break, or the September one. I think that's when it will be announced that Brendan Rodgers will extend his contract. So it got me thinking, I'll ask you lot, I'll ask the fans, because it's the fans that matter at the end of the day. Do you want Brendan to sign a new contract at Celtic? 90% saying yes, 10% are saying no. 10% are in the Lawwell camp. If you're in the no camp and you're on the live, tell me why you don't want Brendan to sign a new contract. Purely because of how he left before. There's no way he'll leave before his 3 years. He'll be here for another 2 years extension, says Mikey Boy. He's in the yes camp. Do the board want to pay him? Is he implying if he leaves next summer, it's not the choice but the clubs? I don't think he's implying that at all, Mike. He's not saying that at all. I think he said that he needs to prove his worth of a new contract. That's the way that I'm reading it. I don't read it any other way. I mean, I've went over it 2 or 3 times. He said here Not at all. I think I need to earn my place at Celtic. And that's what I felt when I came back, and it's no different now. It wouldn't matter to me if it was 1 year, 1 week or 10 years. I'll be super motivated to taking us forward. And then before that he said a year is a long, long way out. It is in football, but it's not in football management. Football management, and you can understand what he's saying, because if we have an absolute nightmare, here's the scenario that I think that will be playing out in Celtic. Sorry, Baz, I read the question wrong. I want him to stay. The question is, do you think Brendan will sign a new deal? Yeah, it's do you want Celtic? Do you want Brendan Rodgers to sign a new contract? I think that the board have been very prudent, because although we had a fantastic season last year in the Champions League, from a football perspective, there was an opportunity to get us further up the league. And there was a couple of games that were lost, where they dropped points in, that we should have won. So the board will be taking everything into consideration, and it will also take into consideration, well, we've got a Champions League qualifier. You know, you've got to give a little bit of stick and carrot to someone. You know, we'll give you a new contract, but get us into the Champions League again. We're not going to give you a contract now and then you don't get us into the Champions League. That's counterproductive to what Celtic are trying to achieve on a financial basis going forward. It's massive that they need the Champions League money to be able to stay that far in front of every other team in Scotland, let's face it. Or other teams will start to catch up. And also, if you want to progress on a European level, you need to have that Champions League money to be able to spend a little bit more to bring in better players, allegedly, but that's what other clubs do. The Celtic model was obviously to bring in lower valued players, not lower in what they can give to Celtic, but a lower value, and then obviously turn them round. He's only lost one Scottish Cup game. That's some going. He lost the Premier Sports as well. We've only done 2 doubles. He's lost 2 cup competitions since he came back. And yes, it is some going, but from when you've got KPIs in any business, they'll sit down and they'll say, well, your performance indicators were to win a treble the first year. You didn't do it. It was to win a treble the second year if you didn't do it the first year. You haven't done it. That's the key performance indicators that happen at that level. That's what they look at. At the end of the day, it's about how much you're improving the playing staff. That'll be a little tick. But the big ones is winning the Premier Sports, winning the league, and winning the Scottish Cup. And whilst they won the Scottish Cup the first year, he lost out at the Premier Sports. The second year, he wins the Premier Sports. You're thinking, bang on, we're on the road to the treble, but we fall short at the end of the year. So I think that Dermot Desmond would have been sitting at that meal that they were sitting at, and he could feel the tension, especially if Lawwell was there, because you could say there's a scenario playing out once again at Celtic where Brendan Rodgers has okayed it for Kyogo Furiashi to leave, but the board have fell short. Not Dermot Desmond, because he's not there on a day-to-day running of the club. So maybe Brendan sat at that meal and went, well, if you're not going to fucking back me the way that I want, and we managed to win the league, it was never in doubt, but you're at fault sitting there with your mark on your napper with your 100 and odd million in the bank. You're at fault for not getting a replacement for Kyogo Furiashi. So you've lost out on your KPIs, Mr. Nicholson. That's what I would say to Nicholson if I was Brendan Rodgers. You could say, yes, I missed out on the cup, but you missed out on bringing me a replacement for Kyogo, thinking that we would be able to walk both competitions. And I told you that the squad will start to tire towards the end of the season. So it's an interesting one. Celtic will only live beyond podcasting technology. And everyone's getting a bit with their podcast stuff. 54 seconds worth of video, 54 seconds worth of interview with Callum McGregor, and not even at the end of it is go and watch the rest of it on Celtic TV. The editing and everything is just terrible. I mean, I understand what this guy that came in from Apple is trying to do. I totally get it. I get it from a business perspective. What they're trying to do is put snippets out, but they're doing it so bad. The Celtic Media, I don't like digging people that do media, but they're just not doing it right at all. You've got to give somebody an incentive to want to watch it. Just putting out the snippet itself, and then just catch the rest on Celtic TV. It's just not working. It's just not working at all. But anyway, let me jump back into some of the comments. I think last year we dropped off massively in certain games. You could tell that we were going to drop points. I get the players aren't robots, but our second string squad should be good enough. Zhead, that's the problem. That's the issue. And that Brendan Rodgers will know that. It's the second tier players, the players that didn't go out on loan, that are the backup players to the first team, weren't just good enough. And Brendan Rodgers knows that. He would never come out and say, Brendan would never come out and say, look, the players ran out of steam towards the end of the season. He'll come out and say it's been a fantastic season. But as you go and do the podcast with the club, not a chance. They couldn't pay me enough. They're probably paying somebody 15 grand a year to go and do that for Celtic. Jesus. Do you know what I mean? Not a chance. I think they could have the whole Celtic TV thing could be more engaging with fans. And the podcast editing is terrible. It could be so much better. But it's typical Celtic. They do everything on the cheap. They do absolutely everything on the cheap. Can anyone give me names of managers better than Brendan Rodgers? There's quite a lot in a European context at bigger clubs. But if you're talking about historical Celtic managers or current managers in the game, there's lots, Annie, unfortunately. But it's managers that understand Celtic, and this is where Brendan Rodgers has got the upper hand on other managers. He has the understanding of what it means to manage Celtic. He has the understanding of the financial restraints of a club like Celtic, and he's willing to work within those constraints. If we then start looking at other managers that are willing to accept that, you're going back to Ronny Dyler type stuff. And whilst Ronny was a fantastic manager and he was successful, and he's went on to be successful since he left Celtic, he's been very successful and had a great career since he left Celtic. We are never going to attract top managers that want to bring in the best players, because financially as a club we can't do it. So the board have to play a balancing act. It's the board members have to play a balancing act on keeping Brendan Rodgers happy and keeping the financial stability of the club going in a trajectory that means that the club's going to remain profitable, that it's going to have cash in the bank, that we can put away money for future projects, we can bank money for seasons that we maybe don't get into the Champions League. There's all these scenarios that have to be played out at boardroom level, and that's why Brendan Rodgers understands the club. But at the same time, Brendan Rodgers, when he agrees to let a player go, and we know Brendan Rodgers' exact words, we have known for a few months that Kyogo wanted to leave Celtic. Well, if you've known for a few months, you should have had your target identified as a manager, and you should have went to the board and said, that's the man that I want in the day before Kyogo Furuhashi leaves. Simple. But it doesn't happen. Old Celtic TV, I'd rather watch you drunk on beer than YouTube unpolished. Oh, jeez. Imagine me and Peter Grant sitting, I'd get smashed. Peter, come on, yeah, beer, come on. Get the good stuff in you, Peter. Ronny came in after Brendan instead of Lenny. He'd been more successful. That's an interesting one, Kevin. Because remember, there was rumours at the time that Ronny was actually first of all sounded up to be a number 2 for Lennon, And you got to remember, Lennon had a very coloured relationship with his backroom staff. Let's get straight to it. Do you think from Europe we would seriously take the Celtic job? Who do you think from Europe would seriously take the Celtic job? Quite a few, but not at the top end of the table. I mean, there's quite a good few managers out there that can do things in a European context, but it comes down to Celtic policy. Anyway, for me, I think that the old Ronny roar. I loved the time that Ronny was here. I loved it. I mean, it was if you went to Celtic games, then, do you know, it was the away fan base get Ronny and got Ronny. We only really spent O'Reilly money last year. This is true, but that's the way that it's set up at Celtic, isn't it? Wee Man Sham loved the Ronny days as well. It was the fan base. Do you know what I'm going to say, which might be a bit controversial? The Celtic fan base during the Ronny Dyler years were maybe more together. We're maybe a bit more together. That's just my take on it. But that's. It was easier to get tickets for away games. It was easier to get tickets for European games. When you were running buses, you know, it was easy to run as big a bus as you want. It was good times. I hated the Ronny days, lol. Oh, jeez. Should have been sacked long before he left. Really? He was unlucky. Was Ronny? I thought. Terrible in the room. Half empty stadium for European games was pretty poor. Yeah, but was that not the fans giving the board a message? After the success that we had under Neil Lennon, to then bring in a manager that knew nothing about the club, and it was a project management decision. Do you know, it was bringing in a lower tier manager that had European experience. So there was no glory hunters. Exactly, Wee Man Sham. There was no glory hunters at all. It was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant times. He admitted himself he didn't understand the transfer market we were in. Yeah, and that's Fitzpatrick. That's exactly the issue that Celtic has, is being able to bring in a manager. I mean, I still think that's why Ange Postecoglou left, because what about the Ross County semi-final, the Rangers in the semi-final? Yeah, they were bad. I never even went into the Rangers semi-final. I was outside. I didn't even go into the ground because of an incident with someone, so I ended up missing the game. And I knew it was pissing the rain, and every time that we played them at Hampden and it rained, we always lost. And I fucking knew that day. Everything just went wrong for me. It was just fucking. There was one disaster after another with folk getting absolutely hammered, and I was like, this is just going to be a nightmare today. It's not going to happen. Rain. It was passionate rain. I remember it well. You can blame Brendan for all the players. You should take partly blame for the board. Are more to blame as they won't give Brendan the money to get some decent players in the door. I think we can all agree with that. Ronny was robbed at a treble. Yeah, he was. Mary, I can understand where you're coming from. And I think that's what would have went down with the discussions. Do you know, it's not all just about Brendan Rodgers wanting to sign a new contract. I mean, they could have sat down with Emile, and Dermot's like, right, I want Brendan to sign a new contract. Dermot brought him in on both occasions, and Dermot could say, he's my man, he's the guy I want to run the club. But then Brendan goes, he's a prick, and he's no fucking spending money. Could you imagine Brendan Rodgers getting a beer in him round the table with Dermot Desmond sitting at one side, Peter Lawwell, Michael Nicholson and Chris Mackay at the other? My God. That'd be a dinner that I'd love to be a waiter at, just to listen in. Oh man, because it wouldn't all been one way. Do you know? It's not all about Brendan just bending over and saying, "Yeah, I'll take a new contract." Do you know? There will be demands that come from Brendan to say where are we taking the club ultimately. And I know that we need to win the league and all the rest of it. And then don't give me that bullshit that you tell the fans. It's like, seriously, where are we taking the club? And Dermot Desmond will sit in the background and he'll go, well, I want the club to be dominant in Scottish football and going for it in the Champions League as far as we can, realistically. And then Brendan knows, that's fucking brilliant, mate. And then he'll turn around and look at these three and they're sitting going, oh, fuck this, man. Well, the books are good, Dermot. Do you know what I mean? The books are good. We've got all this money in the bank. Brendan's like, well, where's my players? I don't think it would have been as a pleasant a sit down. And Brendan Rodgers said, look, it was good to sit and talk with the guys. It was a good wee outing. I had a meal and a chat around a number of things. So yes, I had a nice meet. That doesn't say that it's not all one way, is it? It's not all if will he stay. Do you know? I think Brendan is putting the onus on the board. Look, I might have not met my targets that you set out, but at the same time, that was affected by you not supplying the players that we needed to get it over the line. If that's the squad we're in, we're trouble. There will be one. Brendan will have us ready. No, I'm not disputing that we'll have us ready. I'll take 70 grand a week in the stress. Jeez. Yeah, Steve. That's pretty much how I think it was. I mean, I could be far off the mark, but this is the interview that we've been waiting for all summer. This is the one. And it's only the beginning, right? If we remember back to in America last season, and I said coming up to the end of last season, I said, wait till we get the interviews from Brendan and pick out what Brendan's saying. Because Brendan had a dig at the board last summer. Even when the season got started and the transfer window closed, he said last season that we could have acted quicker in the transfer market. He's got a bee in his bonnet with Lawwell and co. And anyone that comes in will have to have that concern as well. No, it's okay. It's okay, Dermot flying in on his private plane, flying them over to Mallorca to meet Brendan at his favourite retreat, and and splashing the cash and doing everything that he can for Brendan, sending his private plane to pick up players, making sure that we're showing players that we're a top level club. That's all fine, and him doing that at his expense. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty and the day-to-day running of the club, I can understand why his son wants to take a more active role. And maybe that's why Lawwell and got Nicholson in the door, because he fears that if Dermot's son gets a more active role on the board on a day-to-day basis and running of the club, the profit margin might not be there, because they'll accumulate to, well, would they? That is the big question. Jim McCarthy says, well, why didn't Dermot Desmond put his hand in his pocket if he's a billionaire? Financial fair play rules, you can't. You can't just go out and get the owner to that's what happened to Rangers, and look what happened to them. They sold their soul to American club, the American owners. The American owners are never letting go of Rangers, and they'll never be as successful and spend the money that they did in the 1990s. They'll never get back to what they were. They've lost their club. And people say that Dermot should sell his shares. No, he shouldn't. Because when you have somebody like the Americans that have come into, they've not got the best interest of the club at heart. They've got one thing, and it's the bottom line. If you think Peter Lawwell and co's bad, Dermot Desmond selling his shares to someone else would be 10 times worse than Peter Lawwell and co. Fergus saw what we are today. Yeah. We've gone to the dark side of conspiracy theories in the chat, have yous? We all know where the money's gone. The money's gone nowhere. It's in the bank. It's in the bank. Yeah, we were penalty kicks away from winning a treble, but we shouldn't have been. I mean, those fine margins. Look at the way the players played in the cup final. I don't want to go over own ground because it's past. Look at the way the players played in the cup final. It was crap. Come on. You can't then. We can't change the course of history and say it was penalties that done us out. The record books will show that. But let's not make out that it was a fucking great game. And Brendan Rodgers had the boys pumped up and every single player was fucking fighting for every single thing. That's total lies. That's just bullshit, isn't it? We all seen what happened in the cup final. They ran out of steam. But anyway, Dan Cassie's in the house. How are you, Dan? He's going to say that I don't know where the cash went as well. It's in the bank. It is in the bank. We're at 250 votes this evening, which is a good amount. There's been over 824 people on so far. People popping in and out on a Sunday evening. Let's have a moan at the end of the window. We haven't signed anyone yet. He's all moaning about the transfer policies. Kerr says Celtic will have the bank balance high. Remember that next season, due to the state of the Scottish teams not getting into Europe, we'll have 3 qualifiers to reach the big games. Yes, exactly. And this is why I think Celtic will be banking cash and hoping. Yeah, Paul, you've nailed it. We didn't deserve to win the treble. Anybody that thinks that we deserve to win that game against Aberdeen wasn't watching the same game because we were rank rotten. It's never Aberdeen's coefficient folk are talking about. It's never anybody else's coefficient in Scottish football. Do you know, the Scottish football, the whole European context for teams is to get one game away in July and then that's it. Hurrah, we've had a game in Europe. Woohoo! Fuck off. The cash is under Lawwell's heated driveway. Oh dear. That's bad. Mike Boy says, I think we lacked leadership in the second half of the season. Out with McGregor and Schmeichel, I just don't see any other leaders, is my opinion. For the cup final, the leaders were Kasper Schmeichel should never have been on the pitch. He wasn't fit. He wasn't match fit. Sinisalo should have been on the pitch. The mistake that Schmeichel makes, a fully 100% game fit Schmeichel doesn't make that mistake and the ball going under his arm. Yeah, we're rank rotten at penalties. The only 2 players that stood up on that game for me was Callum McGregor and Cameron Carter-Vickers. You've got to remember, Cameron Carter-Vickers was about fighting in that game. And he was the only player that was. Apart from, McGregor was all over the pitch. Everyone let us down. Everyone. Do you know, they ran out of steam. And they ran out of steam and they ran out of the motivation. And that's the harder part to take for fans. As we ran out of motivation. Hence the reason that Brendan Rodgers says that we need to change the squad. You either change one of 2 things. You change the manager that gets the players reinvigorated and remotivated. You have a change of manager. Or you change the players and you change the squad and give the squad a bit more oomph. Anyway, no massive spending as Briar will be leaving at the end of the season, says Paul Baird. Even though the comment does suggest that he will be staying. He did say that we touched base on it, primarily just a chat around things. Like I said, a year is a long, long way out. I think it does come down to what the board will spend, and whether or not Brendan Rodgers gets us into the Champions League. Because you're not giving a new contract to a new manager and we don't get into the Champions League with one qualifier. Not a chance. I can understand why I want to keep him for stability and trying to build something, do you know, but it seems we're not at a rebuild stage, but we're at a level where we're maintaining the status quo, but we need to improve the players to just get a little bit better. And it is about small increments to improve the squad and improve the team and take us to that next level. And it could be the fact that this is I've said it before, this could be one of those change seasons under Brendan Rodgers' stewardship. With all the changes that's went on in the background, the Paul Tisdale coming in, the Sean Maloney coming in, your board members aren't making those decisions to bring in these type of people if you're 60% thinking that the manager's going to leave in a year's time. Because if he leaves and then all them leaves, you've got to, if you're paying them off, you've got a hell of a big bill to pay all these people off. And that's not the Celtic way. Celtic don't like paying people off. Celtic like to get money in for their employees. So I think there is a bit of longer term planning going on. And like they say, it's our board never gets credit when it's due. At least we've not sold our soul and became an American franchise. Jamie, I think the board does get credit when it's due. But at times like this, it's the times that the board do not get credit is times where you sell your most important player. Kyogo Furiashi, you cannot say it wasn't our most important player in the team. And to not replace that player is criminal by anyone's standards. It's criminal. And that was definitely one of the reasons that we run out of steam towards the end of the season. Because you're having to use Dyson Maida on the wing. You're then having to change his position and you're having to use him through the middle as a striker. It's then putting pressure on other players that are not getting games all the time. It's then disrupting the way that we've trained and played all season, and they're just saying, but it's another, Dyson should be able to play the Kyogo position perfectly well. It shouldn't make a big difference. It does. And that's shown towards the end of last season. Are there any dates announced for the Champions League qualifier? Yeah, it's the end of August. The last week in August. Can afford to pay people off plenty of money. Champions League qualifiers are the 19th and the 26th of August. The draw's on the 4th of August. And then we'll also have the draw for the Premier Sports Cup, which is the week before. So August is a massive time, and it's no wonder that Brendan said, I don't even want to think about contracts just now for myself, because I want to focus on getting the team into the Champions League, winning in the Premier Sports Cup. It's we've got there's and it's look at this, the start to the season that we've got. August is a crazy month for Celtic. Anyone see Kyogo training? Nope. Why would I? Why would I look at anything to do with Birmingham? Anyway, the board sided a number of times with the Police Scotland against fans. Enough said Paul Baird. Maida would put in a shift through any position on the park. I bet you could stick him in goals. He would break the clean sheet record. Yeah, he maybe would. But it's putting a lot of pressure on other players. See, when you move, here's a mindset thing. A mindset thing. If you're a backup player, right? If you're the number 3 striker, and you see Kyogo Furiashi leaving, and you're thinking, right, Adam Ida's next up. He's number 1. And you're sitting on the bench and you're going, yeah, I'm going to get some game time. Kyogo's left. And the manager goes, nah, I'm going to use a winger as a striker. You must be sitting there going, the fucking point is me being here. Really? I know that the young lad's never done that, but, he proved his worth. But anyway, we're sitting on 283 votes. Let's see if we can get it up to the 300 votes. And then we'll shut this one down. Do you want Brendan Rodgers to sign a new contract at Celtic? I was only staying on for the half an hour. Let's see if we can finish this. We need... Get up to the 300. Come on, let's do it. Then he signs a young guy from a team from Germany to play instead of you. Yeah. Yeah, Kyogo's gone, so forget about him. Yeah. Brendan Rodgers also been talking about Jota and saying that he's 12 weeks into his recuperation and he's back in the gym. And then he's also talking about Schmeichel. Schmeichel is expected to play in the game on Wednesday evening. It's when Celtic play their next game. Oh. And that isn't that long away. It's only 3 days and 23 minutes. 3 days and 23 minutes until Celtic kick off their game against Sporting. And if you think that we're going to get gobbed, aren't we? When you look at the highs of last pre-season, it just makes you wonder. Shitbaz, teamwork twice as hard all season, but Celtic Aberdeen do not fall by the wayside. Yeah, Aberdeen didn't fall by the wayside. Anyway, it's very, very true. Right, that's me done and dusted for this evening. Let's finish that poll off. It was just going to be a quick half hour. Do you want Brendan Rodgers to sign a new contract? 87% say yes, 12% said no. No God-given right to win the treble, but it was shameful we never turned up for the final. That and both Rodgers and the players. I think that Rodgers did turn up for the final. It was the players had run out of steam. Anyway, on that note, have an absolutely fantastic evening, Celtic fans, wherever you are, all around the world.